Good evening, everyone. Very happy to be here. As Alba said, it's the first Saturday of summer. We start this work back in the winter still, before spring. And here we are, giving continuation to the beautiful study of this book. I want to just take a moment to extend a little bit here. This is session 6 of this series of talks that we're putting together with this book. Tonight, as we have mentioned, we'll cover 3 chapters, as we have been covering with this work, Emmanuel's work. I would like just to put a disclosure, as we have done most of the talks that we start about the book Thought and Life. There's so much in this book that is almost impossible that in 1 hour we can cover each chapter, and in each of those chapters cover everything within it. So we read, we try to digest, but we encourage everyone to read yourself and learn as much as you can from it yourself with this enlightenment. We already have on the web as well the other sessions 1 through 5 that you can watch and learn with us. The second thing that I would like to say as well is that this book is a great reminder for all of us that we are immersed in this exchange of energy, right? We project ourselves into the universe, and we receive as well all the projections that from one another. And it's important for us to remember that, because Emmanuel again, in these 3 chapters reminds us that we are always in this exchange, right? And within this exchange, there is the past, there is the present, and the future, right? And it's important for us to highlight these things because sometimes we forget. Even though it's part of our daily lives, we do forget. Last week, our friend Yasko talked about what? Does anybody remember? No, don't say Yasko. They're supposed to say it. Don't say Yasko. What did Yasko talk about? Happiness. Does everybody feel happy today?
Yes.
No problems whatsoever.
No, everything is fine.
Everything's perfect. I love this crowd. We can all go home now. No, stay, please stay. And the same thing for our friends and brothers and sisters who are watching us right now and will be watching us in the future. Why do I say this? Because truly inside of us, we may be feeling happy, summertime, all the great things are happening, and we value the positive. True. But we do have our struggles. We do have our difficulties, right? Does everybody agree? It's okay to say it. You're in a safe environment. It's okay. It's okay to say. It's all of us. Now, if I were to tell you as well that it's okay that you're struggling, would you like that idea? Well, again, we're in a Spiritist center. It's okay for us to acknowledge that we're all growing. But for many of us, for some of the struggles that we can't comprehend much, or we don't agree much when we're going through, especially, it's hard for us to say, yes, everything's fine. No, it's not fine. And we struggle, we battle with ourselves, we battle with one another, right? But we learn with Spiritism, if we cannot find the causes of our problems right now, it's in the past. That's not to bring anybody down. We're not here to take away the happiness that we got from Yasko last week, but to also project ourselves in the future. As many of you probably saw, one of the messages that we got from Pope John Paul II is that the future starts now. And once we acknowledge that, we change, we shift. So the things that we're going to see tonight, it's going to cover a lot of the problems that we're facing in our daily lives, especially when we get to the 3rd chapter that we're going to cover tonight, which is entitled Society, right? And guess what? We will read it together. We found so important to say, let's go ahead and digest together. It's a short chapter, but we'll read at least the 3rd chapter that we're going to cover tonight together to cover this thing, to really take the happiness that we got last week, take the reasoning that we will get tonight, and put it together and project ourselves in the future. So as we were saying, we have covered through the first 5 sessions that we had already. All these chapters, the Mirror of Life, or Will, Cooperation, Instruction, Education, we're going to jump some, Suggestion, understanding children, the body, health, and tonight, the vocation, the profession, and society. Now, another question to all of you, and we don't have to go deeper on it, but who here feels that we are in the right spot as far as our career?
Just found the job. I think I am there.
Okay. Some of us we think,
Grateful.
but we sometimes we have our doubts, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Why do we have doubts? So everybody said yes. Why do we have doubts?
But we don't know the other option.
We don't know the other option. Good answer. Did we choose our career? Or were we forced into it?
Oh, yeah. That's another point. Yeah.
Right? That's another point too. I would say with the reading and the study that I got out of this, 7 or 8 times out of 10, somebody chose our career, meaning directly or indirectly, that we were forced to do something because our parents thought that you should be a teacher, or you should be a lawyer, or you should be this or that, or really the necessity of lives. And a lot of times as well, now it comes the teachings that we have, that we did not follow our instincts. Instincts meaning what we bring from the transition, right, of being in a spiritual realm, learning a lot of things, and the promises that we made to say, I'm going to follow this career because this is what I have. The gift that I have is perhaps to speak publicly, not me. I'm still learning. I'm still learning. Or perhaps to smile, or perhaps to teach, or perhaps to become a lawyer, or to become a laborer. But sometimes when we say, oh, become a laborer, work with my hands, build houses, that's for the lower class. That's not for me. Really? But that's your gift. And you would do it so well if you try it, but sometimes we want to be, it's the banker trying to write poetry. Guess what? It's not going to work. You may try to develop a little bit. So this is one of the things that we want to talk about when we come together to talk about vocation. Emmanuel here, remember, he is trying to help us with a book, with a handout, if you will, for those who are reincarnating or for those who are reincarnated already here in the flesh, to say, follow this path, try to do this way, organize yourself this way. This will help you. It's in this book. For those of you who hasn't yet, grab a copy. We have some copies here. It will help you. It will make you at least think twice before you act. And it's a huge reminder to all of us. So let's see what he has to say about vocation. The vocation. Our current vocation reflects all the experiences of our past lives. While many times we may start as beginners in one activity or another, owing to the advancement of technology and the new methods of work it requires, we generally pick up where we had left off in order to continue a certain task or to correct our own personal ways. In any event, a professional title is a letter of credit we receive to help us produce ennobling reflexes in our lives. So the same way that we study when we talk about family, right? And we went through the cradle was one of the chapters that we study, and we know we got reminded again that we are reincarnated with the individuals that we need to reincarnate to rescue things from the past, and we cannot run from it because of these mental reflexes. The vocation is the same thing. The aptitudes that we have, it's the same thing. Think of this way. Why would the God, the supreme intelligence of the universe, tell you to start something now, to be a painter, for example, and you reincarnate as a painter? Let's say you receive enlightenment in the spiritual realm for 20 years to be a painter, and you come over here with that skill to be a painter, to develop yourself a little more, and you live nowadays for 60 years or so. And do you think after you go on back to the spiritual realm, 60 or 70 years, that you would have learned everything that there is about painting? That you would have become a Picasso or someone very renowned? No. There's way more. Why then would there be an interruption when you go back to the spiritual realm? You would continue to learn until you master such a thing. You may take a break to learn other things, or you may learn other things as you grow in the artistic field, but you would continue in the same role until you master. And then it comes a point of your life, of your evolution, that you may forget about painting, and now you have to learn mathematics. You develop new vocations. So the idea is to remind ourselves that we're coming back to the same thing over and over and over until we learn, we get a lesson from it, and we help ourselves and we help others too. Because it's important that we include everyone else into the development that we have. Parents may learn with kids. Kids may learn with other individuals. Kids will learn with their parents for certain aptitudes that they have. I can name several things that I learned from my parents. I don't do it, but I know they developed this area, right? And we're talking about aptitude as far as the profession, as we'll get to talk about a little bit. But as Emmanuel was saying, as Emmanuel says in this chapter as well, is that a lot of the vocations that we have, the administrator, the judge, the professor, the doctor, the artist, the sailor, the worker, and the farmer are perfectly portrayed in the parable of the talents. And that's why we brought this beautiful painting over here of the parable of the talents by Andrei Mironov to remind of such a thing. And I want to make a parenthesis here, because it's not me who is saying, but it's Emmanuel. Do we all know the parables of the talents? Everybody's quiet. Do we all know? Do we all remember?
Yeah.
Okay. But are we going to study again? It's always good to revisit. And we're not going to read the whole thing. Why? Because obviously it's long and we know a little bit about it. But there are three elements that I would like to discuss with you here. When we know that the master gave a certain talents to certain individuals. One gave to one individual gave 1 talent, to the other gave 3 talents, to the other gave 5 talents, and they were supposed to do what? Multiply it, right? We know that the one that got the 3 multiplied it, the one that got the 5 multiplied it, but the one that received just 1 talent did what? Was afraid, didn't do anything, didn't multiply, right? And what happens? When the master comes back to take account of everything, the master gets upset, right, with that individual. He multiplies what was given to the ones who multiplied his fortune, and to the one that didn't do anything, takes everything away from him. It sounds harsh, because Jesus, when he mentioned this parable, he's trying to connect God to this parable. When we read it, it's like, wow, God is harsh, right? No, think about it. It's pretty harsh, but we got to think about and analyze that Jesus was speaking with a group of individuals who need this really, really tough teachings for them to develop themselves. And the idea of vocation, the idea of career then was not to play music, even though they had art. Art has followed us since the beginning of times, if we can say it that way, but it was different types of vocations, right? But I want to go back to this passage when it says, "And having given 5 talents to one, 2 to another, and 1 to another, according to each one's different abilities, he departed immediately." According to each one's different abilities. Another key factor that I would like to discuss over here. "You good and faithful servant," this is now he's coming back and taking account of everything. "Since you have been faithful in a small matter, I will entrust you with many others." He doesn't say. But for those who multiplied, he's going to give him even more. And even more, he continues down the bottom to those who was entrusted more. And then finalizing, "Therefore let his 1 talent be taken from him." This is the one that he's referring that didn't do anything to it. "And be given to the one who has 10. Because those individuals, they can multiply, and he knows that he can do that. If you were to entrust your money to someone, would you give it to someone who is not going to multiply your fortune? You want more. And it's okay to want more. It's okay to multiply things. Sometimes you say, oh no, I have to be humble. Well, you're going to lose your fortune. Because this is not how the fortune institutions in the United States think about it. They give a lot to charity, they do all, but they are for-profit organizations. And no wonder we have the development that we have, right? The technology that we have nowadays. We need these minds to multiply things. Otherwise, we would have no advancement. So it's okay to multiply, and it's here. Now, how we multiply it is the problem, and that's where we want to get to it. Neither we shouldn't be in a position where we hide everything or away from this multiplication, or we do it in a way that will hurt others, right? So what happened to us when we receive, we are prepared, there is a preparation in the spirit realm, and we come back with this idea of, I'm going to be whatever we want to be. And your minds are probably now thinking, deep inside of me, I wanted to be this or that. I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty, but we need to think about these things, and we need to help one another, because the future is now. It's never too late. The future is now. What happens to the individuals that don't apply what they came back with it? I got this information from the Wartburg College in Waverly, Iowa. Because when we ask ourselves, what is a vocation? Where's my vocation? And they did this, they have these two diagrams. It's really interesting because when we talk about vocation, and I think that was prudent for us to bring this here, it's a combination of two things, at least right here in this diagram. What you are passionate about, along with what the world needs. Because when we talk of vocation and you search about vocation, it has this religious connotation, the calling of God. And in a way, it sounds pretty interesting, because the calling, which is the word vocation comes vocare from the Latin vocare, which means call, to call, is the combination of these two things, right? And we're going to make a point on this. Then the purpose, which is always interesting for us to look at it as well, where the vocation is again connected with these two things, and we see the profession, which we'll talk about it, which is that which you can be paid for, in a combination of that which the world needs. That's your profession. Your mission is a combination of you can be paid for, in which you're good at. It becomes a mission. And the passion, what you love, as well as what you're good at. So it was interesting for us to look at this and say, what's my purpose? What's the calling? I can never forget that we were reminded years ago by, I can't remember if it was Devaldo or Raul, I believe it was Raul, Daniel can correct me on this, that sometimes we look for different opportunities to be charitable. And we say, just look in your community. What's your calling in your community, right? Excuse me. What is the calling in the community that we have? What are you being asked to do? Yes, I know. I love to write poetry. And I don't, I'm just joking. But what am I being asked to do? Cut somebody's lawn, perhaps? Yes. Right? Work with my hands? Count money at the bank? The things that you're good at it. You can develop other things as you go along, right? When you're in your free time. But the idea is for us to look at this vocation and not let it slip away. Because we don't want to live miserable lives, as many of us, and we're going to talk more about when we get into profession, as we live in society. We all receive resources that we need in order for us to work with our vocation. Each spirit, whatever its position, receives a certain share of resources in order to serve in and ennoble the divine work. Look how Emmanuel is raising the bar when we're talking about this idea of vocation, of our capabilities. It's not to satisfy our needs only, because yes, God wants us to be satisfied, wants to be happy. the happiness again that we talked last week. But there is a higher purpose, and this is the higher purpose, that the level that we have to get to when we're applying ourselves. If you go to an establishment where you are greeted by a person, the person comes to you and say, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever you're doing, whatever establishment, there's a shift. Okay, you can say the person's getting paid to say such a thing, right? It's part of her job, but you can feel. You know when that good morning, that greeting was genuine enough, and that person is not thinking about her salary. There's a smile, there's a body language attached to it that you can see that things are different. She or he is using of the resources that was given to that person and putting aside, and we're going to talk more about this, the idea of a salary. There is a difference. In most cases, however, we use the Lord's concessions in our egotistical thoughts with the absurd notion that we can place ourselves above God. Then we face the ill effects of our conduct when our body reaches the end of its journey. This leads us to the painful compulsion of return to a new beginning, where the principles of reincarnation will determine our values with precision. What happens? Another passage of this book that I would like to share with you. And we read at home in our God studies at home, which we have it on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. And I say this because I often come across with individuals. The reason I say the time and the day is because sometimes we are praying together, we don't know. So then we can connect. If it is Tuesday at 8 o'clock, let me know. Maybe we can pray for one another as well. And for other days too, because it's nice for us to connect in this idea as well. It's on chapter 5, verse 24 of the Gospel according to Spiritism. The chapter is entitled, Blessed Are the Afflicted, talking about afflictions, right? And it's called True Misfortune. We hardly come across this chapter, but it's a beautiful message because it talks about misfortune. What we think, in fact, is misfortune in our lives, it's actually the greatest things that is happening to us. The spirit, Delphine de Girardin, who gave this message in Paris 1861, reminds us that, let's say a storm who comes by and destruction behind. What comes after the storm, right? What comes with the storm? Perhaps the branches of the trees that are broken, all the bad things, they got knocked out because they need to be pruned. The bad leaves and everything, the water washes all the impurities away. It brings water to the animals that perhaps need water, as well as to the environment, to the ground, right? To flourish again, to make it fertile again. We don't see it that way. We only look at the destruction. So when we look at things in our lives, the Spirit tells us that we need to look the consequences of each act that are happening to us. Most of the time, we feel that we have no control, and sometimes we don't, right? If we were to think, if I didn't do this, perhaps this wouldn't have happened, we had control, then we were more responsible. But there are a lot of things, in fact, that it happens to us that we don't have control of it. I can't control what the government will do tomorrow. But if we're together, if we're reincarnating in this life, we're responsible for it as well. We're reaping the consequences of the past. So now I have to act differently. The same thing with the storm. I can't control what weather.com will say. It's there, it's what we're receiving, and that's what's going to happen. I can't change the weather. But the Spirit reminds us that misfortune, in fact, are the things that blinds us. Us saying to ourselves, I don't want to deal with this right now. I don't want to deal with the resources that I have. I'll put it aside. There is another reincarnation. I love Spiritists because Spiritists, out of all individuals who come in contact with this idea of reincarnating, then they use the excuse of saying, there is the next reincarnation. I can do this next time. Well, guess what? Now you know. You will be asked even more now. You will even be more responsible because now you know. So the Spirit reminds us that whenever we fall into the abyss of the party time in our lives, that we allow ourselves to be enchanted with the environment, the choices, right? The the things that blinds us, that's a misfortune. Because we will then have to come back, as Emmanuel is saying here, to fix it, to make amendments again with the individuals that were messed up. So he finalizes this chapter with the following. When these people return, they all usually experience injustice and hostility, difficulties and disappointment wherever they go. They see their high aspiration painfully dashed. For the law dictates that we must collect the fruits of our actions, with which we had implanted in our soul, in the souls of others. This will correct the source of our emotions and ideas, so that we may become aligned to the positive current that flows from God and permeates the entire universe as it returns to God. There's no way for us to find balance if we're not balanced. It's common sense. I mean, it's redundant, right? To say, oh yeah, I want to be balanced. Well, we need to balance ourselves first. We need to find this balance. If we do something to our lives, to others, which is also a good reminder here, besides the idea of doing this to ourselves, fooling ourselves that I want to be this person or this individual, I want to follow this career and live a miserable life, as well as when we do this to our children, when we do this to other individuals. How many college students, they go to school and first semester, second semester, third semester, oh, I can't do this with this anymore. Why? My parent put me here, I don't know. I don't want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor, right? I don't want to be a surgeon. You know, it's too much for me. I don't need to be, I don't want to do this. We have to make sure that we change this mentality with ourselves first in order to do with others too. That's why, again, through the studies, one of the things that we are reminded to do as well is to try different things. Yes, it's okay if we got to a position, a point of our lives and say, this is not for me, then look for new things. But you have to expose yourself to new things. Listen to yourself, know yourself. People will tell you, you're great at it. Why don't you do it? And you're like, no, you know, that, oh, I don't want to do this, no. No, get up and do it, you know. Or some people say, you're doing this so well, you know, go make some money out of it, right? Multiply this, teach other people. If you don't want to make money, well, at least teach other people. It's the talents that we have being utilized. Perhaps give it to the banker, as the master said to the one who received one talent and didn't do anything. Don't hide it. Give it to the banker, and the banker will multiply it, meaning teach someone else, and the other person will multiply it. We find this in the Spiritist Center sometimes, where we see a lot of potential of individuals who could be presenting something, who could be giving the water, who could be studying, conducting a study group, because they know us so well. Why do they know us so well? Perhaps they studied in the past and now they're holding it for themselves. Oh, this is so pretty. Multiply it. The same thing in school. The girls can vouch for this, right? In school, sometimes you see girls or other guys or whoever, the teachers, they're great at teaching certain things, but some other teachers, why is that? We have to be compassionate with these individuals. We're not here to, just, throw darts at them. Sometimes the person is just not happy. And this is exactly what I do when I go to establishment and I don't get a good morning, a good afternoon, or good evening. We have to be compassionate to these. Then we say it. How are you? To at least remind the person that she's still or he's still alive. Because sometimes we come across some individuals that it's like, why are you here? There are several times when we had to say at work to certain individuals that who couldn't bear the job, whatever they were being asked to do, and we told them, look, find something else. And I'm not saying this in a negative way, but it's for you to be happy, because a lot of times, what we can the pain that we bear work, what happens? We take that home and we deposit on others who has nothing to do with it, or in society. Oh, I hate this, I hate that, but obviously you cannot liberate yourself at work because HR is right on your neck, right? But we're talking about this vocation in our day-to-day lives. Let's just not encompass in our work environment. So this is really important for us. There are a couple questions in the Spirit's book as well that I want to share with you. And this is for us to really just kind of get to an understanding a little bit better so we can move on. There are 3 questions that are very interesting, and sometimes we tell ourselves, well, oh no, we can't learn these things from the Spirit's book. Guess what? It's here. Are all of us equal before God? Because when we talk about vocation, aptitudes, right, the qualities that we have, we all think that we should be equal. Well, if it was that way, it would be, remember, we already learned here that we receive things based on our evolutionary path, right? Yes, all beings tend towards the same goal, and God has made laws for the good of all. The saying, the sun shines for all, reflects a broader truth than we imagine. Why hasn't God given the same amount of talents to all of us? God created all spirits equal, but each one has lived a varying number of lives and has evolved in accordance to them. And then the other 2 questions that I want to and by the way, those are the 2 questions I just read. It was 803 and 804, the law of equality. And then the other one that I would like to cover is the law of liberty, when Kardec asked, there are people who never succeed in anything, who seem to be pursued by all evil genius in all their undertakings. Isn't there something that can be called fate in such cases? You can call it fate if you like. In fact, it results from the choices those people made in the Spiritist state. They wanted to test their own patience and resignation by a life of disappointment, but do not suppose that this is a definite rule. And the answer is a little bit longer. We're not going to read the whole thing, but it's our choice. So we can get into the next chapter, which is called Profession. This is the beautiful part of it. Question 928, Earthly Joys and Sorrows, which is exactly what we're talking about tonight. Our talents, 928, our talents are indicative of a vocation. Don't many of the troubles we have in life come from not pursuing that vocation? And the Spirit says, yes, often parents, out of pride or ambition, will force their children from the path nature laid out for them, and so will jeopardize their happiness. It is misguidance the parents will be held accountable for. Now, children, let's correct something here. That doesn't mean we will not try to guide one another in this evolutionary path that we are together. Parents should help them to say, try this, try that, right? I never forget when we were watching the HBO series, John Adams, when he turns to his son, the 6th president of the United States, John Quincy Adams, and says, no, you're not getting married now. This is not time for you to get married. And he was very sharp with his son, because he knew that his son had a different life to bear, or to work, or to really put himself forth to study and become the man that he became and become the president. Now, the story says that perhaps John Quincy Adams did not want to follow that life, but he did an amazing job. Hasn't been for his father, the 2nd president of the United States, to say, no, you need to follow this path. Perhaps he wouldn't have developed the way he developed in that lifetime. So we need to think about it. There are certain things that perhaps we don't want to do, but parents, mothers usually, they have that heart, right? That intuition that we prepare for this before we're reincarnated. So you need to really be strong, right? So we don't think that the children can do whatever they want, and parents in that case also can force kids to do whatever they want. It needs to have a balance. And then Kardec very wisely says, you would approve then of the child wealthy parents taking up shoe repair, for instance, if this was her natural talent. In other words, do whatever you want. Well, that is a bit of an exaggeration, says the Spirit. Civilization has many needs. Why would a wealthy young person choose to fix shoes if she can do other important things? She may use her aptitudes in other endeavors. That is, if they don't run counter to common sense. For instance, instead of being a second-hand lawyer, she may instead become a good engineer, a technician, etc. Guidance. We need guidance. We love guidance, right? So why be a shoemaker when you have the means to go to college, to get the education, to bear some sacrifices to become someone who can make a difference? Not saying that the shoemaker is not necessary, because we all need shoes, right? The labor works that we receive. And this brings us to profession. Emmanuel says the following: through the various professions and the many contacts which they afford between people, the human race has created a vast network for the purpose of uplifting human dignity. As a result of these self-giving actions, repercussions of divine beauty are produced, which open up new roads to celestial kingdom. We can spend the whole night on just this paragraph right here, because when we get up in the morning and we think that, yes, I have to go and have to produce or I have to make some money. That's all we think, right? But we forget that the individuals in our work environment, they're waiting for us. The company is waiting for us, right? The society, the location where you're serving, they're waiting for us. And believe me, they are. People look for us. If you don't see it, if you don't feel that way, it's because you're not looking, or you're not allowing yourself to see it that way. Kids, I was talking to my kids the other day. Near the end of the school, kids have this thing of, you know what, we don't have much to do in school. They're only going to play a movie. You know, go. You have to go. They're waiting for you. Your teachers are waiting for you. Some of them may not. Some of them, they wish they would be home. But most of them are. The principal is waiting for you. The state of Maryland is waiting for you. This country is waiting for you. No, serious. We think it's funny, but it is true. Alba, you work in the.
It is true.
Yes, thank you. So we.
State of Maryland say attendance for each school.
Let me. I'll let her, because she works in that location. I'll let her say it. Say it, Alba, please.
Attendance is important for the public school. So public schools are evaluated by different categories, and one of them is attendance.
There's a difference, though, and we're going to get there. So thank you, Alba, for this reminder, because it's you're not hearing from Leo, kids. And it's not Leo who's saying, but we are being weighted. We are being accounted for. Right? So it's important that we have to have this respect for what we have, because we're not just going to work. The purpose is completely different. Is to, again, receive this repercussion of divine beauty that is being produced by celestial minds. When we uplift ourselves, they come down to us, right? It's not them coming to us, but us reaching out to them. And we see more of this. The thing is, it's not just to go to school. Oh, okay, here, present. No. Body and soul, right? We're going there, body and soul. Because otherwise, it's just another body, another machine, another accounting of the state as well, to show to the other states that the state of Maryland is doing great with attendance. But what about exactly, just number, what about the tests? Right? So we have to balance ourselves. We have to find this importance within ourselves, so we also receive the important reminders from up above. An honestly practiced profession, even when remunerated, when we get money, induces people to respect the fulfillment of their duties. But selfless giving, which is one sacrifice for the happiness of others, ennobles the spirit. That is why everyone feels the need to build a permanent altar in their hearts to true heroes. Selfless giving begins when duty ends. When practiced, it produces a reaction in the higher spheres that reaches down to humanity. An ordinary delinquent in prison inspired pity because of his suffering, but the pioneer of a noble cause, unjustly jailed in the same prison, elicits admiration, respect, and emulation. This idea here, guys, of selfless giving begins where duty ends. It's very important for us. What do we do when we want to get a promotion? Work hard. You start doing things that is not in your job description. It's very simple. You want to get the promotion, you want to work harder. You want to get more money, you have to work extra. It's a simple thing, especially in this country, which I admire a lot. And that we have to go and work harder, and we have to work harder, and we have to break the frontiers, and we have to break what we think that in the past, oh my gosh, this is really hard. No, that's going to be nothing compared to what I want to accomplish, right? And it's like that in every sector, if you will, right? Some maybe not, but they don't develop as fast as others, especially with technology. If you work in the technology field or with money, things happens very fast and changes very fast as well, right? So this idea that you'd want to do more, you do more in order for you to exceed, it's not bad. Obviously, we want to do anything that will be detrimental to us in the present or in the future. But when we work selflessly, that we apply ourselves to say, it's okay. Yeah, I'm making money because I have to make money. But today I'm going to try to find something different at work, something that I never learned. It may not be with the task because you know the task is so mundane that you're not going to really be able to perfect anything else. Hopefully you will, but perhaps in a conversation with a colleague. Perhaps, sending an extra 10, 15 emails that your manager was supposed to send, and you go ahead and send it. I used to hate it when my manager used to come to me and say, why don't you pull this report? And banking has, I'll tell you, again, it's another discussion for another day, for another talk, but I had a lot of reports, and they create reports that you don't even know exists. And some of them, not only you're pulling the reports, extracting from the system, but you have to interpret, you have to make sure that you crisscross numbers and a bunch of things. So it takes a long time. And then I start thinking, wait a minute, I'm learning something new, so why am I upset, right? And then I used to get upset because I know he or she was supposed to do that, and that person was asking me, and the person has time to do so, and I didn't have enough time. Why am I pulling? Okay, I get it. I learned, but now why do I have to pull it? It's that person's job. And then it comes to selfless. I not only learn how to extract the report from the system, I not only learn how to digest the report, but also I learned how to manage my time, to make time and make that report available for everyone else. And how much this will produce for the company and for myself as well. It's the selfless part. When you do things without thinking that this is not in my job description. Again, another mundane way for us to see what this is. So perhaps when people ask you to walk a mile, as Jesus mentioned to us, walk 2, walk 10. This is the idea of the selfless part of our profession. The friendly and conscientious administrator who is scrupulously divides his earning and spends his share honestly in an example of earthly virtue, is an example, of earthly virtue, but the person who works selflessly for the benefit of others is a messenger of heavenly virtues. The connection is not, the phone, if we can say this way, is not ringing that way from the other side to here. Is us, let's do more so we can receive more as well. It's open the window of opportunities that we have in our lives to connect with higher minds. And if you think, and I tell myself this a whole lot, and this is my field, that banking is not important, giving accounting of money is not important, go read the book, Sex and Destiny. That shocked me a whole lot. When they use math, and in the Nostular also, towards the end, right? When they start doing accounting of the number of spirits who reincarnate on earth, and they go back this way, they go back that way, back to the spiritual realm, if they did well, the percentage of spirits who did well with the teachings that they received before they reincarnate, and then when they discarnate, they go back, they're in a better mode, or type of a survey type of thing. I read that, I was like, okay, wow. So accounting is good, right? because they also spirits, they talking about accounting, not money, but it's a different type of accountable. So we have to think, is the area that I am in, it's nothing, it doesn't serve it's just like the kid when they're learning geometry, they're like, oh, I'm never going to use this. Well, maybe not in this lifetime, but you will. And the repetition is what is important right here for us to understand. So, giving continuation to this part of profession, it's the sublimation of the act. Instead of thinking about the money, instead of thinking about the outcome only, look at the means. What's happening? The people around me. Is there something that I'm missing? Yes, I have the 1, 2, 3 tasks perhaps throughout the day, and in between I have lunch, and then 5 o'clock I want to go home. What's happening throughout that day? Humankind progresses forward when faithful to their obligation. Through selfless giving, angels are drawn to them, thereby improving life in the world. Activities which transcend the everyday monetarily compensated jobs are associated with those who no longer think of personal comfort, thereby attracting the mental reflexes of intelligent beings who work anonymously for one's sake and who for love's sakes, and who perceive the eternal arms of an incomprehensible divine God-like beings. So that job that you think is not the best job, perhaps because you didn't make the right decisions with your vocation, choosing the right career, you still can make a difference. And you can prepare yourself now with the good, devoted, as being a good devoted person, working selflessly in that job, to perhaps create a new future. It's interesting that Emmanuel puts these chapters in such a way that they all combine. I don't know if you've noticed, but we actually, some of you have come to me and mentioned that some of these chapters, they're connected with one another. He talks about reincarnation, then the cradle, and how we connect with one another, how we come back for one another, and now this right here, talking about the vocation and in the profession. There's a difference. And then the next one we'll see, which is society. So what happens when we transgress our profession, that we use it in a bad way, right? It's important for us to say this, to analyze this as well, is because in not so well developed countries, we have seen, and many of you perhaps from Brazil have come in contact with someone who got a doctor's degree or got a master's or became a doctor in something, but they can never find a good job in that area. Or perhaps that person who wants to be a teacher, even wherever they are, they can never find a good teaching job or a location that they feel secure, they feel respected. Emmanuel explains to us, for those who abuse their profession, guess what? In the next life, they will come back and they will have to fix the environment where they made a little mess. He gives the example, for example, of a doctor who abuses of the power of being a doctor, doing the wrong things. In the next reincarnation, guess what? That person will come back, will try to do everything that they can to become a doctor, but they won't be able to. They'll probably be working as a helper or an individual who works in the hospital, to work selflessly for many, many hours, but will not have the means to become a doctor. And sometimes that the person, if that person was in fact a doctor, they would have done an amazing job. There is that doctor, what's the name of that we watched that documentary once, the cardiac surgeon, remember? Watched about a couple years ago. Who he couldn't become he was an assistant doctor from Johns Hopkins, yes, I forget his name now, technician. And He didn't have a degree to actually apply the surgery, but he had the hand. He had know-how. He did everything, but he couldn't become a doctor. So it's important that we look at these things now. So in the future, whatever we want to do today, and we couldn't do it because perhaps somebody chose for us, or we really didn't do what we were supposed to do, then in the future we can do so. Start thinking about now. How am I going to prepare myself? So that when we reincarnate again, it's going to be fresh. It's going to be fresh. So going back to what we were saying in this transition to the other side and coming back, we'll see that in this arena of unlimited moral devotion, where those who dedicate themselves to voluntary work, such as the genius who sometimes carry heavy mental reflexes from their remote past, and therefore suffers, we also find eminent clergy of all religions, gifted artists, and noble inventors of all nationalities, as well as devoted mothers, so often suffering, forgotten and totally ignored throughout the world. Because of them, higher spirituality gradually descends to the human sphere without thought of compensation, fame, or gold. Through total detachment of self in helping others, the soul experiences the sublime mission of alignment with God's will. This attracting the divine thought that works towards the polishing and ascension of humankind. Our mentors, they have a duty. My mentor, your mentor, think about it. They have a duty to help us, right? And think of the number of times that we drop the ball. Imagine if our mentor were to say, it's not in my job description. My salary is not for this. Instead of to do what? You know what, Leo? Let's rethink about this, right? Let's just study more, do it more, be more compassionate, right? Or sometimes they say, okay, this is going to bring certain consequences. I'm going to be here because, we can dribble the idea of because you did something, you're not going to be responsible for. You're going to be responsible. I'm going to be here with you. It's going to be hard, but so that's the idea. If they can do it with us, in a way, it's a teaching for us to continue in our path as well. So what happened, guys? What happened when we are not happy with what we have, what we became, how we are conducting ourselves in our professional lives, among all the other things that we have, all the other problems, right? We said earlier that, yes, we feel happy, we're great, we feel great, but deep inside of us, we have the things. We're reincarnated to progress, and progress is not easy. We feel in our society. We gave the example of going to establishment and the person not even saying hello to you. And we see that day in and day out. We feel that sometimes, that we don't want to talk to anybody. Why is that so? So this right here, forgive me, I'm going to read with you the whole chapter because it covers a lot of the pain that we are suffering nowadays, that we're going through nowadays. We're not going to touch in the idea that we learn of the law of society that we learn with the Spirit's book, because that's a given. We have 2 ears, 2 eyes, we have a mouth. We're supposed to communicate. That alone says a whole lot. The blue chair it's going to stay here. I'm going to walk through this door tonight. It's not going to bother me anymore. But this or that look that I received from that individual earlier today, we carry with us, right? We carry with us. And that's going to make me feel upset or not, liberated or not, and so on and so forth. So a lot of the problems that we have is right here. So we're learning this, we're going through this chapter, and I want everyone to really focus on the past, what we have done, where we are right now, and what we can change so that our future society, our kids, ourselves reincarnating back again, because we know we're going to come back for it, it will be better. All right? So Emmanuel says the following. Human society may be compared to a large melting pot of mental thoughts, where each spirit within it is the process of evolution and purification, developing its own mental reflexes. Inside this environment, the principles of action and reaction operate with precision. We can't run from it. We talked about the mental reflexes, what happened in the past. Now we're just collecting, and it's just a portion of it because God is merciful. God is merciful. So with precision, we can't escape it. If we're here in the United States of America, Saturday, June 23rd, in this room together, it's because all of our choices, everything that we did, right? Not only the choice that we made this morning, today I'm going to Spiritist Center. No, everything is because it's just a consequence of all ourselves, our baggage from the past put us here. It's not by chance. Nations like large factories of progress are a valuable aid to civilization and significant centers of work, where a great number of souls participate in their self-education by serving the community. They often move from one country to another according to their need for certain acquisitions through experience. I'm one. The experiences that we need, right? To learn a new language. I often look at my kids and I look at them and sometimes they make fun of my accent. They make fun of, the way I say certain things. It's okay. Juliana's looking at me like, oh my gosh, you shouldn't have said that. It's okay. But I often tell them, I wish they would go through this process of our learning a different language. Not in a passive way, but in a forceful way, because it makes you think differently of what you had before and what you can accomplish too. It's not easy. When people come to me and say, English is hard, it is hard, right? I'm by far, gosh, I haven't mastered yet. I learn a new word, usually I would say maybe once a week. I was like, and I'll go and Google, what is that word? What is that person saying? Or sometimes you read something. It's really fun. You make it fun. But the idea that you have to express yourself in a different language, it's just amazing, right? So I'm just giving you a glimpse of what changing countries may be. But what about the religions that we come across when we move from one another country? The culture shocks that we have to go through. The weather, right? A lot of these things. So we're talking about mundane things here, but we're talking about now this whole society that we live in. Coming from Carroll County to Baltimore County, you will see a lot of differences. A lot of differences, excuse me. And it's the same thing if we go from here to Iowa or go from here to Florida, California. Just in this country, we have many societies, and sometimes we don't value the abilities that we have or the teachings that we can get from these different locations. This collective home of people, where racial and social affinities are defined, is itself the sum total of the emotions and thoughts of its inhabitants. Within its vibratory frontiers, and by means of the brief learning period between cradle and grave, or what we call an earthly experience, this soul changes positions according to mental reflexes it has emitted or those it has assimilated in its environment. Two ways, right? Is what we emit and what we receive. Most likely, what you're emitting is what you're going to receive. But some of them may connect with us a little bit, or to say harder than the other, right? Sometimes we have that guilt feeling or that pride, depending on how we connect with others. We emit it towards others, as well as what we receive back. Since we just mentioned the culture shock, sometimes we receive that culture shock that really is like, okay, run or stay or do whatever, right? And each one of us have our own ways to deal with it. But he reminds of the racial and the social affinities that we have with one another. Yeah, the language may be different, but I'm quite similar to these individuals. Even though this is not the country or the location where I grew up. Why people love New York? Why people love California? Why people love Brazil? Right? There are many reasons for it, obviously, but we can never doubt that there's something deeper than just the weather, than just the people. Oh, it's kind of pretty outside, right? It's like that bad marriage sometimes, that individual sticks with that, the couple sticks together, they fight, but they stay together. They know that deep inside they have to work something out, right? Sometimes we feel the same way, and it's okay. But how we do it is the question. Eventually the time to check values arrives, then physical death dictates the cessation of vital forces which the spirit had received as a loan. The spirit is granted the bodily means for his task of development, service, readjustment, or elevation in the sphere of the flesh. It then reaps the results of its conduct. Many times it will have to start the task of regenerating its attitudes and purifying its sentiment for the reconstruction of its destiny. Remember the parable. At the end, the master comes back and it's actually asking, what did you do with talents? What did you do with what was given to you? And it's the same thing. We ourselves, we're going to check within ourselves when we depart. What did I do with that time? What did I do with the capabilities that I had? Thus, those who trample over the rights of their fellow beings by taking advantage of their position of wealth or social power will later return to live in the same ill-treated way. There they will receive in person the suffering which they created in the hearts of needy people. And if both aggressor and victim do not succeed in ample and reciprocal forgiveness, we will find a social picture of recurrent waves of hatred and vengeance, dissension and crime, a breeding ground for all sorts of delinquency. Much like Earth right now. Much like our state right now. Is it bad? Yeah, definitely. But now we know. It's the consequence of the past telling us, wake up. What are we doing with our time? What are we doing with our talent, with our profession, with one another, with ourselves? So that this doesn't work. This doesn't happen anymore. So the call, that's why I thought it was very prudent for us to, let's read it together, because Emmanuel is very emphatic on what he's saying, and he really wants us to not go through the same thing again. And you may think again, oh, Leo, it's too late. Or it has crossed my mind, I'm not going to lie to you. You know, with my age now, we're not old, I don't think anybody here is that old, to say, oh, it's too late now. Well, start now. Start now. It crosses our mind, guys. It crosses our mind. You won't believe when sometimes I talk to people at work and they're young and they're like, oh, I'm too old to go back to school. Oh, I'm too old to do this. I'm too old to do that. Well, keep saying that and then it will be too old. And then you have to reincarnate again. And then the talents that will be given to you will be quite, perhaps none. Reincarnate in some other places in the earth that perhaps development, at least rural or some kind of infrastructure that's not even there. And here we are, one of the best nations to live in the world, and sometimes we complain. To finalize, societies of yesterday that had enslaved human labor must today receive and nurture as its own sons those it has driven away from the land where they were to evolve. Invading armies that trample over the fields of poor and humble people will be reborn as children of that conquered land where they must work for the reconstruction of the institutions they had destroyed. We don't have to go into the news right now, right, for us to picture what Emmanuel is trying to say. All over the world, not only U.S. and its borders, all over the world. Segregationist groups who humiliate other races return carrying the same pigmentation they had detested, collecting the result of their own deeds. Aristocrats who are insensitive excuse me, who were insensitive to problem of their lower classes after living in luxury are usually reborn in the poor sections of the city. They drink from the cup of poverty, the repercussions of their cruelty when, in other times, they had laughed at the pain and suffering of others. To finalize, human society has always been a gigantic filter of spirits, in which souls learn experiences regarding wealth and poverty, as well as giving and receiving orders. By this process, they gather the harvest of their own planting and either remain at ordinary ground level or ascend in obedience to divine evolution. What we are going through right now is a consequence. What we will go through tomorrow, it will be a consequence of what we do today. It is tough, Yasko, I agree. But how do we change this? And this is the point of us tonight. How do we change this? It's not by going and just voting. It's not by going and just raising our voice. It's within. Remember mental reflexes, right? Even by thinking. Joanna de Angelis tells us for us to keep away, this is again, another mundane issue that we have, keep away from negative thoughts. And I'm including negative thoughts of everything that is negative, everything that goes against the natural laws, right? Being idle, being lazy, perhaps doing negative things, connecting with things that perhaps we know it's not right. And that can be all sorts of things. If we keep thinking or doing the same thing over and over, we create images. And for us, even when we decide, the more we do it, even when we decide to change, it's going to be harder. So if we don't change the aspect of life that we receive from the environment, because now we're receiving the reflexes that perhaps in the past we have done. We could have been the politician that perhaps messed up in the past. We could have been the person who trespassed someone else's yard, and now we're fighting to have a home. Oh, don't think, no, I've never done that. Well, why we're here? So the calling is for us to change within, so we can change our actions. That before I go and try to trespass someone's freedom or ability to live, take advantage from one another, I'll do it differently. Even if we have to lose, so that in the future, we have a better life. It's funny because I came across somebody posted something on Facebook saying that a gift card was given to someone who was suffering, and that person gave, I believe, the gift card for someone who was suffering, who was going through a tough time, for them to go and buy something for themselves. And another person who discovered that the gift card was given took credit for it. And the person was like, "What should I do?" Well, let it go. What can you do now, right? And the person's like, "No. What can you do? It's okay. The end, what you want to accomplish was what? For the person to feel better about themselves and go buy something, receive the gift card. Whoever it came from, it doesn't really matter. Well, for the person, in fact, it did, because they felt betrayed. But these are the things that we're going through life, and if we retaliate, it will be worse. I mean, we could go and talk to the person. Why did you do that, right? So these are the things that we need to change. Our mentality towards one another, towards ourselves, respecting ourselves, so we can be respected by others. Because if we demand respect, we have to respect ourselves. If we conduct ourselves, if we walk on the street slouchy and all people look at us, well, body language is important. I don't care if the person's short, tall, whatever that person is. It's important for us to respect ourselves and be attentive when we're talking to people. Say good morning. Change someone's life with just simple acts, simple things. This is what we would like to leave you in this session. It's never too late. We can always change. Society needs to be changed, but we need to change before. In the next session, we'll study about prosperity, habit, and duty. We will open up for a couple questions, comments that you may have.
I
Yoni, please.
Just to add what you say about taking the wrong way. So I know a family whose daughter years ago she studied something at college, and as soon as she graduated, she just had like a crisis in her life. Like all she could do was cry. So her father is a doctor. He takes her to the doctors and take her psychologist directly. You should be happy you graduated and, you're so intelligent. Well, guess what? Bring me the sisters, the brothers, everybody, the whole family, because she could not even talk about, so much she cried. Well, the psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever, he studied the whole case, talked to the mother, talked to everybody, and they concluded that she didn't study what she really was geared to do. You know what I mean? And she now is a doctor. She helps babies come to the world. She studied something like drawing. You know what I mean?
Art.
I'm not arts, kind of, desenho industrial, whatever. And nowadays she is super happy in all, I would say, all her the fields of her life. It's like a person, like a flower that. So you see the mercy of God, because she still had the time to correct the way, the direction, and she. Imagine you go back, after you graduated, you are already in Brazil 20, 21, 22, depending.
Right.
And then you go through medical school.
Wow.
And take all you have to do. But you know what I mean? It was the best thing. Because but imagine, you were born to be a doctor and you go study something else. And, because if it was like a poor person that had to, no matter what, now you did, you have to go and make your living. You cannot take a second chance. She could. Thanks God.
Thank God.
So you see, it's what you said, in the mercy of God.
Right. It's important for us to open up to these second chances, because sometimes we think that there's no second chance for me, or there's no opportunity for me. Perhaps not to follow a career per se, but you can go to school, and if you cannot just go to school, read about it, study. In your free time, go back to the things that you, in fact, really have that passion and desire to do so, and read about it. Become acquaintance to it, because the next reincarnation is right around the corner. The 70 years lifespan now that we are living here on Earth, that gratefully, because of the advancement of technology, we are partaking now. It's just not even a blink of an eye, right? It's pretty fast, and it's gonna happen. That in the future, you ask God to look. Please remind me of this. If I didn't follow what I was supposed to do, remind me harder next time. And life will tell you. Life will tell you. Hoba.
Thank you, Leito, for the talk. It helped me, especially with a misconception. I don't know why I had this misconception, referring to the profession and serving others or walking the extra mile. So for the ones that work in fields, the humanities fields, we are connected with people. It's certainly, you feel this blessing even more if you are in a different area, because you need to deal with people every day. So you are working with people and you are serving people, basically. And one of my misconceptions was like, I'm doing just my job. I'm not doing anything else or anything extra for the people that I work with or that I serve. So I was thinking that we need to look for or search for other opportunities outside of our job, of our profession, to serve others. Why I had this? I don't know. Maybe I was taught that way. So, however, after today's presentation, when Emmanuel bring this idea, and hey, if you're cleaning tables in a McDonald's, you can serve there. Mm-hmm. You can walk the extra mile there, or whatever you are doing in whatever field of profession or vocation, which I love it, right? Because it feels like we are getting bonus hours for the next life.
Yes, that is true. Emmanuel, in different teachings as well as different authors as well, reminds us with this idea of vocation, we have to face new things. We have to try new things. How can you decide when you don't have the ability to try it out, to say truly to yourself, this is not for me. I tried, or I didn't learn anything. This is not fulfilling for myself. And yes, it will take a long time before we get to the point that our whole world is accomplished, right? It feels that there is a sense of accomplishment, because then we have to go back as well and look at the other factors. Who is around us? What are the needs? Because there are a lot of selfless individuals who are not doing the things that they like to do, like a mother, for example. They could be doing different things. They don't think of that. Thank God. That's why they're mothers. That's why they're given the opportunity to be mothers. But they don't think of, oh, you know what? I could be watching TV instead of taking care of my son. No. They don't even think. They know the instinct is there. The mother feeling is there. And there are a lot of people who work in different fields of life, completely different things that they wish they could do to serve humanity, to serve society. And we have several examples that we really need to go and do what you're saying. Be charitable. Or I'll go even extra mile. If you are doing something that you don't like to do, to get paid, and you do well. It's funny because some individuals, they don't like to do it, but they do extremely well. They develop that condition to do well. Do even more. Go outside and do charitably so that you perhaps can help someone without charging. Because what you're doing at work, you're getting paid for it, right? Is it easy? No, it's not easy. So it's just a calling for all of us. It depends on each one of us how much we can do. We will know how much we can bear.
I was so aware during your talk, it was excellent. There are a lot of great points that you spent time on and shared with us, so thank you. That you are around 40, and therefore you're working with your life experience so far. And of course, you're very concerned about your children. Concerned normally.
We all are.
Right. And how, we care about your kids too. But I want to gently ask you not to pick 70 as the end of life.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I will explain myself. Hopefully I won't make it worse.
And just because, of course, I'm embarking on this stage of life, and it's not really addressed under vocation or profession, but I really think it's still there. Yeah. Because this is an incredible opportunity at this stage of life to create things. Mm-hmm. You typically think of people volunteering somewhere. A friend of mine from high school is now going to Mount Washington Pediatric to hold babies.
Wow.
She finished her career at University of Maryland Medical System. She's my age. So it's a very exciting time to continue your vocation.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope I'm not going to do like the commercials where, you try to correct yourself and you make it worse. So the lifespan of the world right now is when we get to the 70 and the 75. That's why I was referring to the 70. And guess what? It's getting even better. It's getting even better. Because of technology, because of the advancements that we have, we are, really progressing where 70s is a thing of the past, right? 80s, 90s, and we do have, a lot of advancement that we will do and continue to receive and continue to develop. Think of the scientists out there that are doing a great job for us to live longer in life. Because the more we can do to stay in the physical body and grow, the better we are. That when we go back, we'll go back and say, I was a completer. I was someone who really tried, despite all the difficulties, right? Despite the how the body is now crying. And yes, I am 40. The knee's hurting. No joke, it is hurting. You probably saw me limping a little bit, but I still try. My wife sometimes is like, why are you running? Why are you doing this? Because I have to. Because if I stop, it hurts even more. So we know it happens. But that's the reason why I was referring to the 70. And I think that we have to create and learn with one another that when we get to this age, tell ourselves it's not over. It's the beginning, right? Because tomorrow, like we said, the new reincarnation, it's out there. So I think that's the... Yas would like to say a word.
Well, I see life a little bit in that what we are saying here, that is a challenge or we were deviating from one way, is a norm. I think all of us came here with some talent. We have some notion that I'm good in that, I want that, but we misinterpret. Mm-hmm. For instance, I heard this beautiful story of a writer, Brazilian writer called Rubem Alves. I think everybody that's Brazilian, they know. He became this famous writer at age of 50. 50 he starts. So we ask, well, what happened to you before that? And he said, no, since the beginning, when I was young, I want to be a great pianist. Great pianist. So imagine, he came with this talent of imagine that he would be in the stage performing to people. So he envisioned these people, right? Big people, audience. But for some reason, family was poor. He says, he's jokingly, my house was too small to hold that piano. So he could not be a pianist. So he started to go to the priesthood to be a pastor. And he was one of the best because he was very good to talk to big audience. Look, the piano, instead of being a pianist, he was the priest, talking to this big audience, conveying this other type of beauty. Mm-hmm. But that also was not his last career. His last career, not last, but at least the late career at 50, to be a writer. But he had to have the experience or the ground for his book, probably he got while being a priest, a pastor, performing there, right. Or wanted to imagine him as a pianist. So I think we all here with some foggy idea what we wanted, what we are for. But somehow we either misinterpret or it was really a step that we needed
to get somewhere,
to make a decision. Mm-hmm. And also the other story is that once the door is shut in front of you, you have to get the way to get out from that. Mm-hmm. You know, like another pianist, he was a professional pianist, and with this some kind of accident, silly accident, he was playing football, soccer, and he fell and one of the hand got damaged. And while he was trying to, he could not be a pianist with two hands. So he started, well, I can play with one hand. He became a pianist of one hand, very good one.
Wow.
But then, because of this hard work with one hand, he developed that other disease that is, how you call it, that you use the same muscle over. Anyway,
right.
He could not be anymore a pianist. He could be a very rebellious, be upset with God.
Right.
But then he received a spirit from one of the great maestro, and he came, you can be a maestro, and I can teach you from above. He is discarnate already.
Wow.
I can teach you. And he became a maestro without having the hands. He could not use his hands to conduct. So he had to do otherwise He could not even turn the page. So he had to memorize everything, the music, and really connect with the people.
Right.
This was Martin, José Carlos Martins.
Right.
So, I think we have to see life as an opportunity, a trial, a test for us to see how we're gonna go, dribble, how we're gonna go.
Thank you. Thank you. It is true. And this is the idea. The idea is not for us to think or feel guilty of something that we didn't do or we did do. Most of the time we don't do it. We just wait for it to happen. And this is the reminder for all of us that we get out of our comfortable zone. If we're called to do different things, let's not be upset. Because the energy that we utilize to be upset or to say things negatively, it's a waste. We could be using to do something positive. So that is the idea. I think this is the calling that Emmanuel is bringing to us, because if we were to receive this teaching when we were right here off from school, we would have received it. Maybe one day we will work with children with the, look, here's what you can do. Teenager, we're working with some of them right now, passing the word, multiplying the word, but that's the future. So if it's arriving in our hands right now, it's because we can change now. We can certainly dribble our imperfection and say, yeah, it wasn't for me, it is for me now. And we will do it together. The good thing is that we have one another. We're not alone, right? Many of us have some of these doubts, some of these difficulties in our lives.
The crises are necessary.
The crises are necessary. The moment is now. The thing is when we think that tomorrow is only going to come tomorrow is being prepared now. Whatever we think, whatever we choose right now is what we will dictate our tomorrow. So we leave you with these final words from, again, we already mentioned Pope John Paul II. The future starts today, not tomorrow. So we thank you so much.